Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the Q&A panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's tune in.
Hello and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Harbinger Group, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this session of Power Hour. I'm Janavi, and it is my pleasure to be the co-host for this panel discussion. Our topic today for this Power Hour is addressing technical debt, balancing growth and stability. Now, tech debt seems to be a hot topic across organizations these days, and rightfully so, because when things go wrong and systems fail as a result, it can have a direct and serious impact on business and customers. I'm sure we all still remember the IT failure of Southwest Airlines in 2022, which was largely attributed to tech debt. And that's a company that spent $1 billion annually on technology. We also know that Southwest is not alone. Every organization, no matter how large or small, is grappling with tech debt today, which is why I think our webinar topic today is so relevant. We have an amazing panel of industry experts here with us today who will share valuable insights and tips that will help us understand the nuances of tech debt and how to effectively manage that within our organizations. So, a quick note before we begin. My colleague Kumudini and I will be monitoring the chat and Q&A. So keep all those questions and comments flowing, and we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end of the session. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Srikanth Pattathil, President and CTO of Harbinger Group, who will be leading this Power Hour. Srikanth has been with Harbinger for 25 years and has been pivotal in writing Harbinger's success story. Over the years, he has provided his leadership across various functions, including software development, sales, and marketing. His recent focus has been on helping our customers in the HR and learning space solve their product development challenges. For customers and his team alike, Srikanth continues to be an inspiration and the go-to person for latest and greatest knowledge in technology. With that, Srikanth, I'd like to welcome you and over to you.
Thanks, Janavi. Thank you for that introduction. A warm welcome to all of you who are joining us from different parts, whether you are, so good evening, good morning, wherever you are. So we, as Janavi mentioned, have a great assemblance of panelists, experts who will kind of talk about this particular topic in depth, the topic of technical debt. However, before I introduce them and give you an overview of today's game plan, carrying on from what Janavi mentioned about Southwest, we encountered this problem a couple of years back when one of our customers was looking to get acquired. They had all the features in their product, and they were probably among the top 5 in their space. However, as a part of tech due diligence, when the acquiring company wanted to do, they not only looked at the feature set, but they looked at the entire technology stack, and they couldn't go through with the acquisition, not because of features or not because of customers, but because of the tech debt that they were carrying. So that whole process took about 2 years to transform and get to the next stage. So sometimes the business impact of some of these decisions can be financially pretty large, as well as it can take a long time to fix. So, and I'm sure my panelists here have a lot of interesting stories like that, and things to share and how to avoid some of these pitfalls. So before I go further deeper, let me give you a quick overview of the things that we're going to cover today. Firstly, we'll talk about, in the context of tech debt, how to prioritize our roadmap vis-a-vis features, how we can be more efficient at that. Secondly, when we talk to stakeholders, what are the things that as engineers and as technologists we need to keep in mind so that we get the buy-in so that there is enough focus put on addressing technical debt. And thirdly, we will also talk about some strategies and frameworks in case you're looking for some as to how to systematically address and break this problem down so that you can create a roadmap for transformation. On that note, let me bring all of you in to answer a poll to kind of understand, as to what in your current product roadmap or your engineering roadmap, what's your experience? How much of technical debt vis-a-vis features? What's the percentage division? Whether it is technical debt less than 10% of the focus? Is it between 10 to 30%? Is it between 30 to 50%? Or is above 50%? Jahnavi, if you can bring up the poll, it'll be great. And, we can see what the participants, so that we can find some of our answers towards that.
Happy to do that. I'm launching the poll now. You should be seeing it on your screens. Yeah, seeing those responses come in. So maybe we'll give it just a few more seconds and then I can close it. Perhaps I think it's slowed down. So let me end the poll now. There we go. And do you see the results yet?
Yeah, I see that. So mostly, it seems like people are between the 10 to 50%. I mean, but there's a division from 0 to 10% also. So, and above 50%, there's almost kind of nil. So, and based on our industry research and study, I think it ranges between 30 to 50%. That's where most companies land. But we'll probably, take this as a good input as we go into further our discussions about, what should be the ideal proportion and what are the short-term, long-term impacts of this. So thank you for that, Jahnavi.
Sure. Let me stop sharing
this. For your participation as well. So one other important aspect that comes in, and I think why technical debt is very relevant today is we've been talking to many organizations and, most of them want to build AI or AI features, and they want to build some of these features at a very rapid pace, if you will. And what's one of the challenges that they're facing is they can't build as fast as industry or competition is doing because of the technical debt that they're carrying. So unless they fix some of these things, sometimes adopting the latest technology or making changes or quickly building features and releasing that to customers becomes even more challenging. So, and mostly based on industry research, it says that the tech debt is kind of a leading obstacle to innovation for most organizations. One more perspective before we dive into our discussion is all of you who are engineers or product people or leaders in your organization. When you start building a technology, we build it for a certain set of customers and features, and then we build it to make sure that it supports both from all perspectives of your code, infrastructure, integrations for that set of customer base. But as time passes by, customers and features take priority, and I think we keep your focus there, and that becomes the primary goal in terms of building the product and technology. And technology usually, falls behind or doesn't keep up, and you are in a situation where supporting any new customers or adding any new features becomes a very, very daunting task. So that's story with most organizations who don't address technical debt, or who don't focus on it on a continuous basis, or at times leave it a little too late. And therefore you have to spend a lot of time, money, effort, team, whatever it may be, to do this. So on that note, now let me move on. I think we've built up enough background about the topic. Let me invite our panelists and ask them specifically as to what interests in this topic, and also to introduce themselves. Let me start with Anurag. Anurag, hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Good evening, everyone.
If you may want to just introduce yourself, and also say a few words about why you are specifically interested in this particular topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Srikanth, and thank you for having me. Definitely a topic that is close to heart. So my background is I'm currently I serve as a chief product officer at a company called Safety Chain Software. We provide digital plant management solutions, so enterprise software for food and beverage manufacturers, helping bring together production, quality, supplier management all into one system, create context for manufacturers from supply chain to customer, shop floor to top floor, and connecting the broader food and bev manufacturing ecosystem. Prior to this, my background is as an engineer. I started a startup company in the industrial IoT space coming out of college. Built that over a few years. We exited that to a manufacturing ERP company called Plex Systems. I ran half of that portfolio, all back-end platform, IoT, analytics, EDI, and we exited that to Rockwell Automation. And I joined Safety Chain 2 years ago. So my background or my experience in the tech debt conversation, I've seen it from multiple perspectives. I've seen it in a 0 to 1 as a startup company. When you create tech debt, why you create tech debt, what decisions lead you to creating tech debt. I've seen it in the $150 million company scale, Plex, where over 25 years, what happens if you haven't balanced tech debt appropriately, or what the impact is 25 years into building a company of tech debt. I saw it at the Rockwell Automation scale, and I saw it here at Safety Chain as well, right? We're about a 12-year-old company. The interesting thing, as you said, is it's a problem that a lot of companies face. Most companies have some degree of technical debt, and we'll talk about kind of why it happens. But I'm excited to be able to bring the empathy and understanding of why tech debt happens, how it happens, and how do we manage it better into this conversation. So excited to share my perspectives and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Anurag, and I'm sure we will have interesting questions for you, it'll be an interesting discussion in terms of how to tackle some of these problems and your experience in doing that. So let me now bring in Arun. Arun, if you can, welcome once again, and good morning. And if you can share, your brief introduction, and also give an overview of why you are specifically passionate about this topic. And I think you're on mute.
Thanks, Srikanth. Hello, everyone. Arun Agarwal here. I have a decade plus experience in technology leadership and have led various organizations in terms of innovation, efficiency, and growth. I currently serve as the Vice President of IT and Digital for Embla Medical. Embla is a prosthetics manufacturer based out of Europe with operations worldwide. And we have manufacturing operations both in prosthetics and bracing. And we also operate several patient-facing clinics worldwide. My mandate is basically to manage and lead the application landscape that we have within the Americas, and also the IT operations within Americas. A significant part of my career has been spent in US healthcare domain. And I mean, anybody who has worked in the US healthcare domain can vouch for this. That's one of the most slowest moving industries, if you will. And that seems like a natural habitat for a tech debt to accumulate. And we'll talk more about that. But as Anurag was saying, right, startups have a tendency to, accumulate tech debt. And tech debt to me is sort of a passionate thing to do, take care of, right? Because I look at tech debt not just because it's a lazy development or we did as an engineer, something was being wrong. It's just various business decisions that lead to the accumulation of that over the period of time. And that's why you will see that in smaller startups. You will see that in billion-dollar companies where business decisions drive that tech debt. For me, one of the core sort of passion points is compliance and cybersecurity. And I've seen incidents where tech debt has led to cybersecurity incidents. Tech debt, when people generally think about, most often it's about the code that is there. But then if you look at the overall picture, there's infrastructure that is not kept in space, right? There are off-the-shelf softwares that people forget to. And in case of what we talked today with Southwest, right? In case of Southwest, that particular application was not a priority for Southwest because that was not a customer-facing application. That's why they let it go for such a long time without updating that. So that comes back to the business decision. But then what's the risk that goes with it? And what's the organization's risk appetite? That's where I sort of like to, engage my business stakeholders also. And then we will get into more of this as the questions flow, Shrikant and group here. But for me, efficiency is one big thing, but then also the cybersecurity risks these days that is very prevalent, and tech debt plays quite a big role in exposing there. So I'm looking forward to this discussion today, and thanks all for having me.
Thanks, Arun. Yeah, I think you bring in some interesting perspectives of, not just the direct impact, but sometimes the indirect impact and the risks that the business carries. But so I'm sure we'll delve into some of them in due course. Let me now bring in my colleague, Ajinkya, if you want to do a quick introduction.
Yes, good morning, good evening, everyone. Ajinkya here. I work as a business consultant at Harbinger. I work on key strategic projects with a leadership team to drive business growth and excellence. Moreover, I develop all these consulting strategic frameworks which assist clients in digital transformation, addressing key issues like tech debt, operational inefficiencies. So prior to Harbinger, I worked with PwC on multiple functional transformation projects across FMCD, FMCG, textile and manufacturing sectors. So talking specific about this topic, I'm quite interested in it because it directly impacts the key business KPIs, which are mainly related to productivity, innovation, and long-term cost efficiency. I feel addressing tech debt, organizations can improve their reliability and agility, so which enables faster delivery of new features and better resource allocations. So in order to achieve sustainable growth and stay competitive in the market, addressing the tech debt is the need of the hour. Looking forward for this exciting session.
Thanks, Ajinkya. And I'm sure when we talk about the frameworks and stuff like that, what you have created, we'll definitely bring you in.
Yes, definitely, Shrikant.
But look forward to that, hearing that. So let me just jump in, starting with Anurag. Anurag, the first thing that most people are interested is like, of course, we talk about industry examples and, what happens elsewhere. But it'd be good to understand in your experience, what kind of tech debt problems you have encountered. And if you would like to share, something with our attendees here.
Absolutely. So, I spent in my current role at Safety Chain, I've had to spend some time educating the broader business on tech debt prioritization, what tech debt is. And one of the charts that I keep going back to, if you Google tech debt, this is one of the things that shows up consistently. Divide tech debt into categories, right? There's the intentional tech debt or unintentional tech debt, right? Intentional being cases where We have to leave some debt behind, and we have to make a design choice that we know is not optimal, but for short-term decision, for delivery dates, bookings, whatever that might be, you intentionally leave some debt behind. Right? We're gonna only test 50% of the app. We won't get to 100% automation testing. Or we will make a design choice and architect it this way versus this way, because doing it this way costs 10 times more. Long-term scalability is critical, but for now, this is good enough. That's where you intentionally leave behind tech debt. Then there's unintentional tech debt. Unintentional is it's various factors of it, but you made a design choice that wasn't the right choice because you didn't have enough information, right? Or you made a design choice that made sense at the time, but 7 years from now, that technology is outdated, right? As we leverage third-party libraries and third-party tools, they have their own life cycle, right? So for example, we're going through right now, we use Microsoft Xamarin as our framework for mobile applications. Well, Microsoft's deprecating Xamarin, so we have to build mobile apps in something else. That's an example of unintentional. It was a good choice at the time, right? Allowed us to do what we needed to do, but today it's unintentional, and we have to resolve it. So as we think about types of tech debt, balance is key, and being aware of where you have that tech debt is important. When I look at our tech debt register, I'm seeing things like debt in test automation, like gaps in test automation, or gaps in requirements, right? Where we built 80% of the solution, but there's certain things that customers wanted that we couldn't do. Architectural debt, right? We designed ourselves into a corner. We got to work our way out of it. There is infrastructure debt. There's also people and process debt, right? We built a team a certain way. We built processes a certain way to serve a need. So debt, just going to go back to debt, is a reality of building SaaS software, right? So it's not sexy to work on necessarily, but it's a reality of what we do and what we leave behind. It's kind of the long term, what are the decisions that either cost more to keep up or over time expose vulnerability, security gaps. Arun talked about compliance, right? Compliance regulation changes. That landscape changed. All of a sudden, what you built here worked well, but in light of new regulation, needs to be updated. And we're seeing all this privacy stuff come up as we look at operating globally. And Arun, I'm curious to hear your take on that, right? As you operate in global markets and regulation changes, all of a sudden you have tech debt because of what you built. So the way I think about it is in the SaaS world, we talk about in a recurring revenue business model, we talk about churn as the leaky bucket. If you have a recurring revenue business model, if you have high churn, you have a leaky bucket. You're bringing in bookings, but you're also having a lot of customers leave you. In the case of engineering technology management, I see tech debt as a similar leaky bucket, or at least an anchor, right? You might be doing a lot of interesting things, building new features, but if you're not addressing the tech debt, it's costing you more to build the same feature. It is taking a lot longer to build the same set of capabilities. It's impacting your budget and your overall business efficiency, which we'll get into. But when I think about examples of tech debt, how we process it is, how do you prioritize, and what's the impact of the business? But it's important to keep addressing tech debt to some degree. So I was happy to see in that survey, it is being prioritized, right? As with any debt, discipline is important, and we'll get into that. So
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of examples along which tech debt exists, right? From code to people to infrastructure, and I think as engineers, we tend to only focus on code at times, or architecture, but there are all these other aspects that's kind of interesting to cover. And how do you kind of talk to business in terms of that? So I would probably ask Arun as well to kind of from his perspective, what are the examples that he has run into? And, Arun, if you can add some color to that.
Yeah, sure, Shrikant. And Anurag, a great summary there about the technical debt, right? I mean, as you said, it's a deliberate at times or accidental at times when you run into things. Sometimes you make architectural or design decisions knowing the best information available. You pick the right technology. And I'll give you an example. This is late 2000s, 2008, 2009. We are building a brand new application from scratch. Adobe Flash is kind of going away for a rich internet application at that time. Microsoft is promoting this very cool new framework. And I'm sure the developers today have not even heard of it. It was Silverlight. Microsoft still uses it in certain areas of Windows 11, the underlying framework, to do some things there. And Microsoft is promoting this very cool framework, Silverlight. It's very well built. It does great things also. And we picked that as the core development framework for this application. And it took us around 18 months to complete the project. And we are 6 months live when Microsoft announces that they're not going to support it anymore after 12 months of that. So within 3-year period when we started it, and the application is live for a year and a half, and the core framework that the whole thing is built on is running end of life. Now that becomes like, at that point, it's 100% tech debt situation for us. We'll have to do something about it. But that was an accidental technical debt for us. When we picked the technology stack, it was not a small organization. Microsoft was behind it, and it was going good. And we picked that. But that's where we ran into this thing, that sort of become that accidental thing for us. And then other pieces, right? You talk about, Raghu mentioned the compliance issues, right? Someday things are okay, and then a new regulation comes around, and then it is not okay. One of the most recent things that has started to go around for the global businesses is the geolocation of the data itself. It was there to a degree before, when you had certain country restrictions. EU had its own restrictions, but now countries like Canada have taken it a step further, and it's not even a country restriction. You have to stay inside the province if it's a healthcare data. So British Columbia versus Ontario, someplace else, you have to just stay within that province. And now you have to think your architecture when you're building an application, that how are you going to accomplish the data storage to be local while deciding not to run 50 different versions of your applications around the world. So those kind of things show up. But as at the core of it, technical debt stays either an accidental technical debt, you didn't know what you didn't know, or it's a deliberate. You made a choice for the sake of business, for the sake of timelines, or it's the budget. You have that much budget appetite to launch the product, and you go with it.
I think this whole compliance angle, specifically from healthcare perspective, is unique, and I'm sure there are other industries also which has that. But to think about technical debt in that context also is interesting. Maybe that's also another thing, like Raghu alluded to, people and infrastructure that gets missed when we design architect software. So,
compliance from a healthcare side is one thing, right? But you look at all the changes in data privacy laws. California, we have CCPA operating in European environments. You have GDPR and data privacy frameworks. We talked about geolocation of data. It starts to get more granular than that, right? And systems, especially legacy enterprise systems, weren't designed historically with this in mind. So now all of a sudden, a lot of organizations have unintentional tech debt or incidental tech debt. So we got to go and redesign systems so that we can stay compliant with these laws. And that's just some of those examples, right? There's more across the board. At least in the software world, we have the ability to go through and refactor. In other areas in the hardware world, it's perhaps more complicated.
True. So let me, on that topic, also ask Arun this particular question. I mean, since you run the Americas business for EMLA, but there is the other stakeholders, and so from your perspective, it's not just your team and your leadership. You also have to convince the entire global group as to when you're making certain decisions and steps. So one of the questions as engineering people always have is, we understand it, we can communicate with each other, and we can always get our buy-in. But when it comes to businesses and we come back with a response, we say that now we are parking this, right? And so how do we go about making sure that they give it the right kind of priority? And any examples or any thoughts you have in that area?
Shrikant, I think one of the key things that we as engineers at heart miss is that from the business perspective, cool technologies don't really matter that much, right? For them, it all comes down to the ROI. And I mean, Anurag as a product officer can also vouch for that thing, right? It's what am I doing with this thing? And then the second key sort of factor is that the risk appetite of the business in any particular area. And that's what we've tried to sort of build inside Employ, and for me also in a long-term career, is that sort of take those two parameters, right? If we can sort of show to the business that how much risk this thing carries, and if the business is okay to carry that much risk in the business, and that's a business decision at points, and then quantify that in as much quantification you can do for that thing. And then the ROI of this thing, that what are we losing? What's the opportunity cost of losing, not doing this thing? What are we going to be spending time more on? Efficiency gains that we can accomplish. There might be a bolus of spend that we might have to do, a concentrated effort, maybe let's just say for 3 months, 6 months, we put a small team on that. That's an investment. But then in a year from now, you have to spend half of what you spend today in run of that product. So build a business case around that. That has helped us a lot. And then at times in larger organization, what gets missed is the visibility and the scope of the application. At times, the decision makers are so far away removed that they don't see a day-to-day impact of that application or a software product. And it's like you have to sort of do an internal marketing of the two product itself in a larger organization. For us, we have to face that quite a bit. Global organization running in 40 countries right now, and somebody in South Africa doesn't care if it's a US-based application that is, going to go down for something. But then you have to show them that US is actually 40% of the company's revenue, and if something bad happens in the US, that impacts the entire parent organization, and we have to look at that way. So that's another play that comes into this thing. And then another big thing that we have sort of started to, into our presentations or business cases also, is that what's the compliance risk for us now for this thing? And we have started to look at the compliance risk, not only for the geographical region where the application is based. Some of the laws now have started to move in a direction where even if you have a subsidiary running inside EU, like EU is going to come up with this AI-related law soon. And one of the core elements in that is that they are not looking at the subsidiary which was at fault. In the law, they are putting that they can go after the parent organization and actually fine them for 5 to 7% of the parent organization's revenue. Now, that's a big chunk. With small subsidiaries problem, but it becomes a global problem for you. So you started to look at things in that perspective also now to sort of get business buy-in. But then at the end of the day, core two elements that I started with, right? It's the ROI for that project. What does that give us? And how much risk appetite the business has and how much risk they want to carry with them. those two quantifications, because either make the case or it doesn't go forward.
Yeah, it's I think the risk part and the ROI. I think those are very apt things. Challenges at times is how to put those things together. But I think as technology leaders talking to business people, I think you need to start speaking that language if you want to proactively address tech debt. So that makes a valid point. Anurag, your specific views on this particular thing, how to motivate stakeholders to kind of rally in on a technology project when most of the times the users are not going to get anything, right? So and you are a product person as well, so how do you balance between product and technology?
This is such a great question, and one I've struggled with in the past a fair amount. Right? How do you drive a balanced conversation? Because Arun is right. It boils down at the end of the day to, is there an ROI of addressing this tech debt, and what's the risk of not doing it? And the most important thing in that conversation with those stakeholders is, are you actually having that conversation? So step one is, are you having the conversation? Are people coming to the table to discuss, right? Because if you don't, your tech debt, your creation of tech debt is as a result of reckless decision making.
Mm-hmm.
You're building a feature or driving a deal or doing something at the expense of any long-term view, right? You're making short-sighted decisions. If you're having the conversation on ROI and risk, and you leave tech debt behind, or you address tech debt, you're doing so in a prudent manner. Right? It makes sense to do so. The way I've formulated that discussion on our side here at Safety Chain, and how I have in prior life, is to look at a couple different things. One is, what's the speed or velocity that the engineering organization can operate at, right? If we're all familiar with the process of engineering estimation, for example, right? This is going to take me 30 days to build X, right? Address the story. But is that 30 days a result of this is how long it actually takes? Or is it because you have a lot of cruft, as in you have tech debt, you have other things that slow you down? Instead of going from point A to point B, because I have a lot of tech debt in this area, I'm going to have to take this confusing route to get from how much energy does it take to go from point A to point B. So there's the productivity measure, right? As a business executive, how that pans out for me is, how big of a team do I need? How much investment do I need to get a certain level of product throughput out? So you're right in that it might not be quote unquote sexy to work on tech debt, because the users might not see anything directly in terms of tangible features the sales team can go and sell, but it does impact business efficiency, right? So if I'm spending hypothetically $40 million on my R&D budget, if I didn't have all this tech debt, that could be 25 million. You know what? That remaining 15 million can go back in growth levers. So that makes it very easy for the business to understand, yeah, this is the path to ROI, right? What I presented to our board recently is the inefficiency we have today as a result of where we have tech debt. Here's the percentage impact. We translate that to dollars. Here's what the R&D budget would look like if we didn't have this. And what I always push my product managers to think about is, do you have a pathway? So are you able to estimate how long anything is going to take, how much time and energy and budget is going to take to address whatever you need to address? And is there a path to 5x ROI within 2 years? If you can make a clear investment case, there's a path to 5x ROI that makes it very easy to justify even tech debt projects. Right? In our case, tech debt then impacts quality of the product, performance of the product, scalability of the product. The last thing I'll highlight there, kind of how we make the business case and get the attention of stakeholders, is how agile and responsive are you able to be as a business? And I'll use an example outside of software completely. Think back to the beginning of the COVID pandemic. How many manufacturers were able to pivot on a dime and go from building whatever they were building to building hand sanitizers, PPE equipment, ventilation equipment, because their systems were set up in a way that they could be agile. Software was the exact same thing. When growth opportunities come up, how quickly can you react to them? And if you have a lot of tech debt, it makes it very difficult without a ton of additional investment to be able to react. The last 12 months, the conversation on AI has blown up. A lot of businesses want to participate in AI, but if your data and data models and data management isn't set up the right way, you have a lot of tech debt in that area, it's very difficult to make meaningful impact in the world of AI, right? You might scratch the surface, but you're losing the opportunity. So it's an example of where will the future opportunity be and what's the risk of us not doing it? We talked about Southwest at the beginning of the call. We talked about Southwest a couple of times in the call, and not to beat up on Southwest, right? For Southwest, this was a business decision. The cost of tech debt, was the risk of not addressing it? And I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt, right? Maybe the risk was acceptable. And that's why they didn't address it. In hindsight, like, oh my God, why didn't they address it? It likely was, or hopefully was, I should say, calculated business decision. This is risk, and this is okay, right? But it boils down for me to, are you able to bring the stakeholders to the table to have the conversation? Are people talking about openly?
Makes sense. I think the velocity point you bring in is very important, to tell business stakeholders that, okay, if you were to build the same feature without tech debt, you would have gone from point A to point B much faster than that. So when you add up for the list of features that they're building, it's a good conversation point in terms of, focusing the decisions and that you address tech debt, sooner than later. Let me bring in Arun into the next point that we have over here. Arun, if this we have seen that at times, like you alluded to Silverlight, then it becomes like a complete tech debt sort of problem. Like you have to go fix everything. But is that and there are times where people are building features for 3 months, 6 months, and then they approach tech debt, or there are organizations and leaders which adopt a philosophy saying that, okay, no matter what feature we're building, every sprint there is going to be some tech debt that we are addressing. So in your experience, which approach has been more fruitful, or you think in your present scheme of technology and the challenges that one has, what's the best approach if our attendees are interested in?
Thanks, Shrikant. That's an interesting question, right? I mean, in simply put, I mean, there is no sort of one size fits all approach which is right here. I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, we've done it continuous in certain projects, and we've also done the approach of taking a periodic stab at it, and it's worked well, depending on the project size, the complexity, the business priorities. At times, it has come into play in terms of the team's expertise also in the new technology stack to be built. So as an example, one of the projects that Harvinder has been helping us most recently, we actually decided to sort of the tech that had accumulated so much over the years that we actually decided to sunset the current platform and go build a new one with the modern technology stack and everything, and sort of address the tech debt in that ways. Like we are going to just not even bother about that thing. And go to a different platform at this point. And for us, it was again came back to that whole ROI question that the velocity was so slow in addressing things in the current platform that to add any new features or to add any more compliance things or to add any more new market facing advantage we had decided to go with that thing. So that was sort of one way of addressing the tech debt in that platform. It was not a continuous one or not a periodic one, but that was a massive rewrite and became a big periodic one, right? But then in certain projects where we have been more diligent in taking care of tech debt, we have been doing it in a continuous way. And one approach which has helped us in particular is that don't let it be out of sight. We are making a deliberate design decision. We are going to incur this technical debt, but for us that sits as a backlog ticket somewhere in our Jira, and it is there for the product managers to periodically review. And we have this approach of we don't let anything down. For some projects, certain projects, you can't let a backlog go more than 12 months ticket. You have to address it, find a way to bring it in. And does that mean negotiating with the business in terms of the feature set that we're going to release in some places? That's sure that comes into play. So certain projects, going back to your question, certain projects we have done it continuous and it has worked out. But in larger projects or the larger initiatives, that has been a periodic sort of a concentrated effort where we do a sprint or two to just address the tech debt. That approach has been more fruitful on the largest projects for us.
Thanks, Arun, for sharing your kind of views on that topic. And I think the answer or the takeaway here is key. You cannot do all projects, all companies, all software has been built differently. So it's not a one size fits all, do it continuously sort of answer, or, do it one time. But yeah, essentially, if you are starting somewhere, it probably makes sense to do an ongoing thing, or at least have a 12-month review that, go back and, make some changes every month. Anurag, I will bring you in on the following question, which I think is quite interesting. And I think you may have some tips there. In the interest of time, we've discussed that, how important it is to fix tech debt. And on an ongoing basis, or if something is completely legacy, then revamp the whole thing. But as a technology leader who's built so many products and solutions, do you think it's acceptable to leave some tech debt unresolved and leave it unresolved for long? I mean, do you have a perspective on that? Or is it completely?
So echo what Arun said, right? At the end of the day, it's risk. What's the risk of not doing it? We talked about prudent tech debt versus reckless tech debt. Prudent is we're intentionally leaving this behind. You'll always have that, right? Any ideal of a tech debt-free environment is utopian idea that doesn't exist, right? You always have tech debt. But the thing to be aware of is, not to sound like a cliched thing, but any debt has to be paid eventually. The longer you wait, it has to be paid with interest, and that interest compounds, right? So same thing. Small tech debt items, yeah, you can hold off for a while. At the end of the day, it goes back to, is there an ROI to address it today? What's the risk of not addressing it? And sometimes that equation points to it's okay to leave this tech debt behind. It's not worth taking this on today. At some point in the company's journey, those scales will tip, right? We talk about typically the life cycle of any architecture. It's 5 to 7 years. That's because at the 5 to 7 year mark, typically those scales tip. Technologies move, the industries move, regulations have shifted. It makes sense to go and address it. So the only time I would say, though, it is acceptable to leave tech debt behind if you're doing so responsibly is to, one, make sure you are aware of where you have tech debt. Right? You maintain a tech debt register that I review with my product and engineering leaders regularly, and review with the executive leadership team, and review with the board. The idea being, this is the risk we're leaving behind, right? And this is our categorization or priority. So one, you're having the conversation. And two, then you're making intentional decisions on kind of where the risk is and what the ROI is. So best practice always is take a percentage of your product and engineering spend and leave it behind for, we're going to use this capacity protected. That may change quarter over quarter. That may change team by team. We go through periods where 50% of the time spent is tech debt. Or this team for this quarter is doing nothing but addressing these major tech debt projects. Perfectly acceptable. Also acceptable on the other side is we've got this big deliverable or this big thing we're doing. We're going to focus on some new features and the nice, sexy AI thing. We have tech debt. We're going to leave it behind because this is more valuable, right? Comes down to ROI. You talked about, you made a comment there, Shrikant, that, Anurag, you're a product leader. How do you balance this? At the end of the day, whether I've got product managers on my team or engineering managers on my team, goes back to, are they having the conversation together? It's not feature at the expense of tech debt. It's not tech debt at the expense of feature. But our charter is shepherding the company's investments to maximize the outcome for our stakeholders, right? So sometimes that involves addressing tech debt. Sometimes it involves leaving tech debt behind. But in my world, product managers and engineering managers are both talking about tech debt. It is not a engineering only decision or accountability, right?
Those are great points from you and Arun on, focusing on the risk and ROI piece when it comes to, prioritizing your tech debt and then addressing them systematically or one time, or, leaving something behind also, to what lens we should look at it. So yeah, we'll bring in some audience questions as well. But before that, let me bring in our third panelist, my colleague Ajinkya, to share his things about frameworks and approaches of how one can systematically go about addressing tech debt. Ajinkya, your thoughts on that?
Yes, Shrikant. Hope I'm clearly audible, right? Hello.
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Yes. So we have developed strategic frameworks which assist clients in their digital transformation journey, tackling the key issues like tech debt, operational inefficiencies, and scalabilities. Firstly, I will introduce you to a cloud consulting framework. So it is a strategic tool that guides the organizations through 4 levels of cloud maturity. First level is the foundation level, also termed as cloud enablement. Second is the intermediate level, termed as cloud native. Third is the advanced level, termed as serverless. And fourth is the intelligent level with all the AI ML capabilities. The framework allows a structured approach which helps assess an organization current cloud maturity and aligns cloud services within their strategic business objectives. So I will illustrate this entire approach into a case study. Let's take a real world example to illustrate the impact of this framework. We work with one such US based organization, which is mainly involved into a greenhouse gas emission trading program. Initially, it operated on a traditional on premise infrastructure. Here is how we applied our framework and helped client to transition from level 1 to level next level. So the first step was we conducted a comprehensive as a study. This involved analyzing organization existing infra and operations to understand their current state. Next, we followed a benchmarking exercise where we benchmarked their existing architecture against a cloud consulting framework. We mapped their current capabilities to the appropriate level of framework to determine where they stood in terms of cloud maturity. Next step was we analyzed their short-term and long-term business goals. So this helped us understand their strategic objectives and how best to align their cloud strategy with these goals. So based on our finding, the entire activities that we conducted, we recommended transitioning from on-premise stage to the advanced level, that is the level 3, called as serverless level of a cloud framework. Normally, this level is ideal for the organizations looking to optimize scalability, reduce operational overhead, and address tech debt through advanced cloud capabilities. This transition not only resolved the existing tech debt, but also enhanced their entire operational efficiency, security, and scalability issues. So to conclude, Cloud Framework provides a structured approach navigating the complexities of cloud adoption. So this was about a cloud framework. Next, I will introduce you to our integration consulting framework. Now, what it does, it helps businesses choose best integration strategy tailoring to the niche business needs. It assesses factors like cost, scalability, control, and maintenance, guiding the decision between the custom integration and iPaaS solution approach to align the current and future objectives. Now, we'll walk you through a couple of case studies that illustrate our approach in action. Our first case study involves a candidate screening firm, again based out of US. It had a need of integration with the Workday for background checks. So again, we started with the comprehensive as a study. Findings was that the firm required a deep customization and strict data control due to sensitivity of the information. We proposed a custom P2P integration for precise data control and optimized performance. So this solution provided tailored workflows, enhanced security, and cost savings by avoiding iPaaS platform fees. In a different scenario, talking about a different case study, we were working with one such HR tech client which sought to integrate ATS and HRIS system, which enhances the reference checking and employee engagement. We did the comprehensive as a study. The study highlighted the need for flexibility and scalability without significant tech overhead. Again, we recommended iPaaS solution approach for this particular case, specifically choosing Workato. Now, why Workato was chosen? Because mainly for its strong integration capabilities, ease of use, and cost effectiveness. So to conclude, our integration consulting framework helped clients assess their needs and choose the best solution, whether a custom integration or an iPaaS option. So this was about our integration consulting framework. Next, I will introduce you to the experience framework, which is also called as UI UX consulting framework. Now, what it does, it assesses and improves user interface and experience designs across the 5 levels, from basic functionality to advanced intelligent systems. It guides the businesses in enhancing design, accessibility, workflows, and user feedback using best practices and emerging technologies. The experience framework guides organization through 5 levels, starting from level 0, which is about the legacy design. Level 1 is the foundational level. Level 2 is emergent, followed by the structured and user-driven levels. Using this framework, Harbinger assisted a leading workforce management and technology solutions provider in the digital transformation journey. The process began with an as-is study examining the current UI UX state. A benchmark exercise was followed, mapping their existing architecture to framework levels, which help us identify gaps and opportunities. Later on, we then analyze the client's business goals, both short term and long term, which helped us ensure the UI UX strategies in line with their long term sustainable goals. Finally, we recommended a suitable level of digital transformation. It was a targeted digital transformation. We identified a couple of areas of key importance like continuous user feedback. We transformed it from level 2 to level 3, and advanced AI features from level 0 to advanced level, the intelligent level. By leveraging this experience framework, we not only address the existing tech debt, but also ensured a balanced approach to growth and stability, aligning the client's strategic goals for an optimized future-ready interface. So this was all about our strategic frameworks that we have developed, which will help client assist in their digital transformation journey by solving key business challenges like tech debt, operational efficiencies, scalability, and agility issues.
Thanks, Ajikesh. Thanks for, I know we were a little short on time, so you had to say a lot of things in one slide, but I think, the overall thing is, addressing technology debt or digital transformation in a very systematic way, and applying frameworks, creating a roadmap, helps you kind of go through these transformations in a much more predictable ROI and risk averse sort of way. So on that note, I think we've discussed quite a great amount of ideas here in terms of the reasons why tech debt should be handled continuously, and be a focus, how you should measure it, and how you should communicate with stakeholders to prioritize, and what kind of, if you have some frameworks, that use it or create something for your business that helps you communicate this need for transformation and also create a roadmap for that transformation that addresses your technical debt. On that note, let me bring Janvi in to kind of summarize things for us and maybe take us to the question. Janvi, I'm putting on the question slide first, since we are very close to the end here.
Absolutely. And I think Ajinkya has already covered the consulting part and about what Harbinger does. So let's jump right into the questions. And, I'm aware we are on the hour, but if the speakers have just a couple more minutes, we'll take maybe one or two questions. I think I'll just jump to one of the questions that was asked by a couple folks. How do you handle resistance within the team or organization to implementing technical debt management, or just making it part of the process? As Anurag and you both mentioned, it's a balance, the features versus tech debt. So how do you handle resistance?
I'll take this first. Goes back to to what we said earlier, right? Risk and ROI. The way a balanced product and engineering spend strategy looks like in my world is you're carving out of your R&D investment, what percentage are we spending on growth levers and growth initiatives? What percentage are we spending on customer success initiatives that may be deal-driven feature requests or customer needs evolving as we're expanding our share of wallet with them? And then third, what percentage of spend are you leaving aside for maintenance? And typically, the way I want to structure it is 20% is reserved for maintenance activities, bug fixes, documentation, framework upgrades, patching, security, whatnot. That the rest of the organization has no say over what gets prioritized and how stuff gets done. That's earmarked. 20% will be for maintenance, right? You can't pull those dollars for something else. Now that could fluctuate up or down, but that's kind of one way I structure it. You wouldn't drive your car for years without changing the oil in it. Same thing. You have to do some maintenance on software you build as well.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Anurag. And in interest of time, maybe Arun, you can take the other question, which I think is interesting. How do you monitor operational technical debt so as to ensure that it doesn't escalate into a bigger issue over time?
Thanks, John. So that sort of comes back to having a sort of a structured approach, and that gets built into for us also. For an example, when we are doing our product feature discussions, or even for our future state discussions. And one of the things I think Anurag early on mentioned is that with the technical debt, it takes much longer from going from A to B, right? You have all these roadblocks in between. And those get highlighted during the design sessions that, we expected this feature to take a week's time, but we are now estimating it to take 3 weeks. And there's an XYZ reason why that is happening. And that gets documented. And for us, that's a structured approach to, okay, that's operational monitoring of the tech debt regularly coming in. Another things that we have sort of done in our regular day-to-day operational monitoring of things. We know we have tech debt. We know we have old technology, old infrastructure. And that's basically goes back to the incident logging. And how often did we run into an operational problem because we are running a legacy software? We have very well documented procedure to capture that and tag them such that this is because of a decision that was made a year back that we are not going to upgrade to the latest version. And that helps us in the future ROI case building also to the business, that we had X number of disruptions during the year because of a legacy stack. And that was the day the business loss was that much. We can quantify and build our business case also against that.
Great. No, I think that was a great insight and input. I think in interest of time, we'll have to unfortunately pause here. There are a few more questions, 3 or 4 really interesting ones that weren't covered, but we'll make sure we follow up on those in our email that will follow soon, and which will also have the recording to the session. So with that, I think it brings us to the end of yet another amazing Power Hour. I want to thank all of our panelists, as well as Srikanth, for the valuable information that you all have shared. And I'm sure it'll help us all be better prepared to identify and handle tech debt effectively in our organizations. So, and last but not least, I want to thank all of you who took the time today from your busy schedule to join us. And we hope to see you on the next Power Hour. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you.